not do enough research. Because so much believability will come out of what's really there.
I went on numerous field trips and research trips, going to the museums to take fish out of the bottles.
Every single person early on in the film and said, you have to get certified scuba diving, you have to go on the water. About the underwater world without you experiencing it.
The design of the coral reef has been really interesting because it all took scuba lessons involved with the coral. It was spectacular. Just experiencing the reality of a world like that has an enormous psychological impact and an impact inevitably on the work you begin to create.
People came back just with these eyes. It was amazing. You know, I said, I told you.
One of the first things I did was we got together with the R&D group and we looked at images of things underwater. We found, what is it that makes you believe that it's underwater?
We put together our simplest version of an underwater set, almost like My First Ocean. I tried to make that look like it was underwater. Our first test appeared to be either a chlorinated swimming pool or a very foggy day out like somewhere on top. We didn't get ocean water.
Each of these individual aspects of being underwater looked great, but we couldn't get them all to work in concert together. We just picked a couple shots of things above water and things below water and real footage. And I said, using exactly the tools that we have created, nothing else, I want you to see how close you can mimic these actual shots. And they came back a couple weeks later, and they put the two images up there, actually live action footage and then on footage. And I couldn't tell which one was which. We were elated. We did it. I mean, it looks like water. Then we had to sort of pull back and go, wait a minute, it's too real. We want you to believe that it exists, but we want you to also kind of feel that you're in a make-believe world.
We just push on the story as hard as we can, and we try and buy ourselves as much time as possible to work out every aspect of the story.
It's really important for us, sort of at the head of this big pipeline before it gets down to layout and animation and lighting, to work this thing out right. And that includes piecing out the film, that includes the emotion, making sure that people are feeling things as the movie progresses.
And Andrew thought he had the magic bullet because he wrote the screenplay himself and had a complete screenplay going into this, which we don't always do. We thought that this whole process was going to be much smoother sailing, but the reality is once you put these movies up, things come to clearer than just reading words on the page. The thing that finally makes it on the screen is all about rewrite.
Is that funny enough? Make it funnier. Okay.
And a good portion of the rewrite process is not done by the screenwriter, you know, at a word processor or a typewriter. It's the story department. It's the guys that sit in a room with you for close to 2 years,
It was great to see you.
batting out ideas, countering your ideas, drawing up story panels, putting them up on a wall, pitching things, putting things on a reel down in editorial. It's a very malleable, messy, glorious process.
Sometimes it's about doing things over and over and over and over again. And even though I've done this a lot of times, it never fails to bring me to that point where, oh boy, I don't want to do that sequence one more time.
When it works, it's amazing. The power of what you can do with a group of great minds. But it can also be very, very frustrating because there's not a singular mind at times.
Can you help me?
No. You get yourself in there, you can get yourself out.
When it really got dark and we didn't know what to do, Andrew Stan and I would jump in a car and we'd drive to L.A. You know, instead of flying down to go down to the Port Ellen, DeGeneres, or Albert Brooks, we drive 6 hours. But what that would force us to do is to just talk it out with no other distractions. And we worked a lot of good stuff out that way. When I watch the film now, I can remember where we were on I-5 when this idea was brought forward. In fact, the Nemo initiation sequence was written on one of these trips.
Shark bait. Shark bait. Welcome, brother shark bait. Shark bait. Ooh, ha, ha.
We cut the boards together with dialogue, temp music, temp sound effects. It's very important that the experience of viewing the story reels for the audience is going to approximate the experience of viewing the finished film.
We spend a lot of time, we spend years, in fact, honing this story reel to try to create the best, most solid, entertaining template for the movie.
What we decided to do was to establish a range of underwater color to track the characters through the film. So with the reef, we start with crystal clear, kind of very light greenish turquoise. And as the film progresses, it gets darker green turquoise, and then black, and then blue. And then as we get closer to Sydney Harbor, it becomes greener. The pastels are used to kind of outline the color and the mood and the lighting for the entire film. Here's this morning in Pelicans. I start off again with a big broad stroke color palette, and we try and figure out time of day and mood for the film. And then as we move forward and things are getting finalized in story, I go back in and, just visit key shots and scenes to kind of provide a direction for lighting.
He'll put out the inspiration for what the scene should feel like and how it fits into the whole.
We'll scan them in, and then she'll take them and she'll balance the colors a little bit.
And he'll see it later. He's like, wow, that looks as good as I was hoping it would look, which just, of course, makes me feel like $1 million.
The yellow bag you can just bring downstairs because I got the flower and the...
It was by trying to make the shot appear to be like you see when you scuba dive and you're underwater that we came up with a whole bunch of elements that were critical to making a shot feel like it was underwater, which include how it surges and swells back and forth, the particulate matter in the water itself, murk being the fall off of color, that water filters differently than air, the caustic lights, which is the light play from the surface that you see in the bottom of the swimming pool. The beams those things go through, because water's so much denser than air, you can see the light shafts themselves. Okay, now how is it different being in a reef than being in deep ocean water than being murky in a harbor? Oh, okay. So now you have to find different settings for all those various things again and set the levels again. So you get, harbor water and sewage water and clear open blue ocean water, murky ocean water, bright sunny reef water that's shallow at night and at day and at dawn and dusk.
Look at fish, it's amazing how little we did have to caricature them because they're so wild in their shapes and forms.
They took a lot of scientific input, but there are some things you just have to do in order to act that fish don't do.
Real fish have the eyes on the side of the head. They don't have eyelids, and they don't blink, and they don't talk. So how do you design a fish that is able to talk and emote and everything that the animators are going to want to put in there? We looked at how dogs emote. The subtle movements of their eyebrows is enough to emote like sadness or happiness.
Neutral-sided, stern, sad.
And it's the same thing with these fish designs. We put enough eyebrow mass in there to really get the nuances of emotion. So I basically now have to flesh that design out, start figuring out the details about the fins and the gills and the mouth and the teeth, and turn her around, draw from so many different angles. So as I'm developing that character, there are some designs that Andrew really likes, Andrew and Ralph really like, and then they give it to Jerome Round, the sculptor here.
We're generating these sculptures to pre-visualize character design. We knock these out in clay, just like this, and we do it as fast as we can so we can get as many changes from the director and art director, as many as we need.
That's really when the magic happens. Starting to see that 2D drawing come alive in 3D, and it's like I get all this amazing information from it. I start seeing it in a new way. I start turning around, I look up from the top and the bottom, because you never know if that's the way they're going to be seen in the movie.
Once the sculpt's done and we get approvals, then it goes on to the modelers, and then they actually start building them in the computer using our clay sculpts as reference.
And we would have animators come in and help us figure that stuff out too. So the process is incredible. It's so collaborative.
Shark bait, you did it!
Shark bait, you're covered with germs!
The shader and texture art director is responsible for taking those models, those sets and characters, and giving them life in terms of the scales and textures on the surface of the fish.
Tropical fish die a lot, unfortunately, and so they always have a good supply of fish stores of dead fish. So then we take it and we slap it on the scale and hold it up to the light and see what it looks like. Start identifying what the important characteristics are of that fish, what color they are, what kind of texture they are, how they respond to light. So like whether they're shiny or smooth, whether they're velvety or translucent.
Yeah.